Perhaps you've seen it. Maybe in a dream. A murky, forgotten land. A place where souls may mend your ailing mind. You will lose everything. Once branded. The symbol of the curse. An augur of darkness. Your past, your future, your very light. None will have meaning, and you won't even care. By then, you'll be something other than human. A thing that feeds on souls, a hollow. Long ago, in a walled-off land far to the north, a great king built a great kingdom. I believe they called it Drangleic. Perhaps you're familiar. No, how could you be? But one day, you will stand before its decrepit gate without really knowing why. Like a moth drawn to a flame. Your wings will burn in anguish. Time after time. For that is your fate. The fate of the cursed.
Okay there. Were we just attacked by Dementors? Because that's kind of what it looked like. Yeah, my name is Michael, and this is going to be a Let's Play I'm doing of Dark Souls 2. I really, really love this game. I think it's fantastic. And I want to do a Let's Play of it for a couple of reasons. But first and foremost, wasn't that intro amazing? It wasn't as good as the first one, though. Dark Souls 1's intro was truly amazing, and being a fan of history, It really had a historical flavor to it, you know, like you were getting a history lesson, which is why I think it was better. One of the reasons that I want to do this is because I've seen some people doing Let's Plays of this online, and it's not the big people, not the famous people. I'm talking about the, just casuals trying to run through the game, and they're doing a terrible job. You know, there's no other way to to describe it. They're really struggling. They're bashing their head up against the wall of this game, and it's just sad to say, because I remember when I first played the first Dark Souls game, and it took me 80 hours to beat the game. 80 hours. And I wanted to create this kind of tutorial and guide, just to guide people through it and let them know every step of the way that no matter how much you're going to suffer, it's worth it. It always, always is worth it. Because it's just an amazing, amazing series. And you can't really, you can't give up, because it's always going to be worth it. So let's take a look over here. I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of things with the game, including, but not limited to, just the general mechanics at the start, what items are best, where to go, how to play the game in general, and my feelings and comments on it. Most importantly, I think this could be good for veterans too, because it's good background noise. And I'm also going to be talking about, I'm going to be comparing and contrasting the three games, Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, and DS2. And I'm going to do that just to really help finalize my thoughts about these three games, because I tend to believe that Dark Souls 2 is my second favorite, and Demon's Souls is my third, which is kind of heretical among the hardcore Demon's Souls fanboys out there, but I still love that game too, and I want everybody to know before my comments are made that I love all three of these games. And yeah, that's it. So, let's move on a bit. First, let's talk about the starting area, Things Betwixt. That's kind of a cool name, but it also reminds me a little bit of kind of silly, not necessarily silly, but childish or adolescent horror or fantasy, sort of like Harry Potter, like I mentioned the Dementors before. And, yeah, there's a bit of a vibe to that later in the hub area that I'm going to talk about. Oh boy, is this guy going to come up here? That was that. Here he is. I think that this game is really not very good at this opening level. Demon's Souls also had a tutorial level, and it was equally as mystifying exactly where it took place and where it was in the land that you were in. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense where you were, and in Dark Souls 1, unlike these two games, it did make sense. Where you were, the Undead Asylum, made sense as a place in the game, and it was interesting, it was full of lore, and it was so tight and well designed. Whereas in Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 2, this feels kind of tacked on at the beginning. Although in Dark Souls 2 it's a little worse, because you can go back here, which makes it a little bit strange. Don't try to aggro these guys. They are, I believe they're called gremlins or goblins, and they will hand your ass to you right away. You can see that health bar up there. It is very, very low. You don't really have enough health to take these guys on early on. There's no point to it either. You break right when you come down here, and you can find the first item. All of the items in the game that are not sold by merchants or in chests are highlighted. Ooh, an ass. No, not by an ass. Highlighted by a white and blue light. That's sort of a soul light. So you can see it in a lot of the dark areas. Although there are a couple of areas in the game that you can't see it too well, but maybe that was an intentional design choice. And we get the rusted coin. And we're going to take a look at the items. I'm going to be reading off some items, talking about what we have and what they mean, as I pick them up throughout the game. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The dark sign is sort of a symbol, kind of like the mark that Guts gets in Berserk to mark him as a cursed being. This is basically what makes us undead. We are a hollow or an undead, a creature that cannot die. No matter how many times we die, we are always revivified somehow at a bonfire, and I'll talk about those a little bit more later. The dark sign is a pretty useless item. It's just a lore item, really. The only thing you maybe want to use it for is to head back to the checkpoint, called a bonfire. And you don't really ever need to do that, to be honest. I mean, it happens very rarely that you will need to do that. I've only ever used it when I've gotten stuck on the environment, needed to get out, and didn't have another item that can do it. Now let's move on a bit. Look at these guys. Come on. Look at the bones! Oh, look at the bones. They're everywhere. Just head straight over here. You can see a house in the distance. That's where we're going to really start the game. It's been criticized that this game does not allow you to start with character creation and then begin. You have to go through this little area here. And they say some people say it sort of breaks the fantasy setting and makes it feel more like a game, but I don't really mind. We're not going to be going up here, see? Yeah, that's a harbinger. Most especially in Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, you get these kind of little visual cues about what you should and shouldn't do about areas. And this is just a general tip about any Souls game, is be observant. Look around you. You have to be constantly aware of what's all around you. And if you just came up here like this and didn't look around, you wouldn't have noticed that soul item down there, behind the waterfall. Being behind the waterfall reminds me a lot of The Legend of Zelda, and I like this a lot. We're going to talk about that item later, the small, smooth, and silky stone. But continuing on with our inventory, these two items are multiplayer items. I'm not going to talk about them just yet, because I want to do a whole spiel about multiplayer later on. The rusted coin is not terribly useful. All it does is give you a little bit of an extra chance at enemies dropping rare items. There'll be magical items later on in the game that you can just wear, equipment and armor, that will do this, and so it's not very useful. A small, smooth, and silky stone, used to slightly restore HP. Do not use it for that. That is a troll move. This is useful for something else, and we should save it for that. The shine of this stone is no ordinary polish, and can only be achieved over a long period. Some in this land are in search of such stones. Yeah, that's a little too obvious for my taste. Let's go talk to these hags. Don't you talk about my face, woman.
It's an undead. An undead has come to play.
I don't like that come to play thing. That does make it sound too much like a game. And this whole area and the music makes it sound a little bit too Harry Potter-ish to be made to take it seriously. And this spoke to that kind old deer. It's a little unclear what happened to us at the beginning. It's a bit unclear too in Demon Souls, but in Dark Souls again, Dark Souls, the common theme is that that's going to be the middle porridge. It was just right. You know, you knew what happened to you in Dark Souls 1. You became undead, and you were locked away forever. But in this game, you become undead, and you kind of wander away and talk to someone. I hate these hags taunting me. I also don't like that you can't get their armor. It's kind of a hallmark of the Souls games that you can get the armor of all of the characters in the game, or most of them, and you just can't get there. It's really sad. Anyone who's seen my channel before will know that I'm a big fan of Planescape Torment, so that is what I'm going to name myself. Oh, God. The candles, that makes it look more Harry Potter-ish. I'm talking to these witches. Not that I don't like Harry Potter, I love it, but yikes. Now, what an undead or a hollow is you're thinking to yourself, well, don't we want to be immortal? I mean, isn't it a good thing? Why would we be unhappy about that? Well, one thing is that when you're undead, you begin to lose your passion and interest in life in general. And that loss of interest will gradually lead you to go completely insane. So playing the game is a way to retain your sanity and sort of avoid giving in to the pointlessness of your existence, which is another one of the great things that makes Dark Souls fantastic. Now, let's talk about a few of these things here. Class. Unlike in most other RPG games where you're kind of set into a class, especially in pen and paper RPG, in Dark Souls, in the Souls games in general, the starting class you get by no means determines where you're going to go later on in the game. You can start as anything and end up at the end of the game as anything. So it doesn't matter so much except to how you want to begin the game. I mean, after you get maybe 10, 15 levels after this, which is not that long before you get that, you're not going to really even care what you started out as. It won't matter at all. I would suggest perhaps not going as a cleric or a sorcerer if you are not familiar with this series, because they're spellcaster classes, and as such you can kind of cheese enemies. So if you're worried about your playthrough and you're worried about how you're going to do, well then yeah, maybe this would be a good idea to go as one of these things, particularly the sorcerer. However, they do start out quite poorly. I don't even think the sorcerer can use any kind of shield with his strength early on. The explorer is kind of a silly class. You start with a bunch of items, you'll notice up here. Oh, I guess you can't go up there, but a bunch of items at that portion of the screen that the other classes don't start out with. It's not that valuable, though, so I would not even bother with it. It just really isn't very valuable. You can get most of those things pretty quickly, and you don't need them. The bandit, if you want to use magic, don't be a bandit. He has 1 intelligence. That's kind of ridiculous. You shouldn't do that. The swordsman class I would advise against, because you do not start out with a shield and are asked to begin with a confusing type of fighting style that I'll get to in another time, that it's really kind of complicated to do. I would argue that you should start out with the knight or the warrior, because they both have decent strength, decent hit points, fairly good armor. Both of them are a decent starting class. The deprived, by the way, is someone who wants to start out at the absolute bottom. You see, he's actually at level 1 and has neutral stats on everything. So you have the ultimate choice of where to go. And you can get armor and weapons fairly quickly that I'm going to show you later on. But I'm going to be playing a strength character for this build, so I'm going to start out as the warrior, because he has pretty darn high strength. Your starting gift. No, don't pick nothing. That's silly. The life ring is not very useful, and I think you can get it pretty quickly. I think in the first area of the game, so don't bother with that. It increases your HP slightly. Yeah, very slightly. Not enough to warrant it. The human effigy is a thing that will restore your humanity. I'm going to talk about that later, but I don't really think this is very useful too, because you can actually get 5 of these before you go into the starting area, for heaven's sake. Healing wares, this is the only one that really seems useful. If you're worried about your gameplay, if you're worried about how you're going to do, start out with some extra healing items. That might help, but I'm still going to advise against it. The Homeward Bones sends you back to checkpoints, which is kind of nice, but you can get them quickly in the hub area before the first level. You don't need it. The Seed of the Tree of Giants I'm going to talk about when I talk about multiplayer. It's a unique, interesting item and very useful, but it's not something that a beginner is really going to need, and ultimately not that important. Bonfire Ascetics is kind of a troll beginning in a way, because it allows you to make areas harder. It'll actually take the area that you're in, to the New Game Plus level afterwards. So you sort of reset the area. This is not terribly useful unless you are trying to farm something. It can be very useful if you are an experienced player, you know where to go, and you know what you want to farm, but ultimately I would avoid this. Petrified something is what we're going to do, what we're going to go with, because we can actually trade this for something useful later on. And we can get we have a chance, not guaranteed, we have a chance of getting a rare item because of that. Let's move on to body, gender male, build. Let's see. So with physique, muscular. Want him to be ripped. He's a strength character. Yeah, this section, I'm not going to linger on this, but the character creation screen in this game is pretty terrible. It's kind of sad compared to what a lot of games have these days, and it's not appropriate. I mean, Dragon's Dogma had a great one. This is terrible, but at the very least your character's skin is not shiny and glistening like it is in Dragon Age Inquisition. Alright, I'm going to make him one. And I'm going to give him a mighty stash. Yeah, looking sexy there. This is the Middle Ages, remember. I'm not going to waste too much time on it because I don't really like it. I don't think it works too well. Is this your true self? What are we playing, Persona?
All people come here for the same reason. To break the curse. You're no different, I should think. They're all to keep you from going on. Oh, wow.
A lot of the enemies that we're going to be fighting are known as hollows. They are insane humans that have been undead for centuries, perhaps. At least decades, if not centuries. That have completely lost their minds. They've not been undead. They've been undead for so long that they don't want anything. They don't desire anything. What you want and what you desire is an important part of this game. And no, I'm not saying that because I'm a fan of the Warlords. Okay, that's just the keys to the DLC. None of the classes actually start out with shields except for this class, but that's not a big deal because we can get a shield very quickly, so don't worry about it. It's not an issue. And this isn't an especially good shield either. I mean, it looks kind of neat, but it's kind of nothing. That right there is a bonfire. The bonfire is the checkpoint system of the game. If you go here, you can rest and restore all of your health. This will also reset all of the enemies in the game, excluding bosses, of course. So any area that you are in, you will have all of the enemies return after you've killed them. You can attune spells. I don't have any ability to use spells just yet. Don't worry about burn just yet. That's not something you really need. And you can store your stuff in here. I don't need the rags we were wearing as we came in anymore, so we're going to put those away. And the joke about him starting with a shield, excuse me, is that he starts out with a broken sword. So he has the one guy with a shield does not have a sword. And I'm going to go over some of the basic combat stuff that you need to know. Remember I said before looking around? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go over what that item is in just a little bit when we get to the first area. And this is the tutorial, and thank the Lord you can just run through it and go to the end and not give one care about this tutorial. I actually hate tutorial levels, which is strange because I'm giving a sort of tutorial now, but I want to explain. People need to know this stuff about the game, and it's unfair that they don't mention it. This little thing I'm going through, this little fog wall, usually separates you between you and a boss, but here that's not the case. So let's go fight some of our fellows. You'll see these people are hollows, who are essentially zombified humans in our way of thinking of things. And let's just go over some of the combat basics. I'm going to be talking about combat the entire game, of course, but let's just talk a little bit about it. If you hold L1, you hold up your shield. Wait for him to attack. You notice the green bar is your stamina. It will go away as you run or attack or use a spell. And it will also go away if the enemy hits you it will eat away at your endurance. Usually, though, the enemy is not going to be like this. It's where he just does one and then walks away. More competent enemies are going to chop away at your shield again and again, and take away a significant amount of your ability to resist. Let's see here. R1 does a standard attack. R2 does a heavy attack. And something you just need to keep aware of is the moveset of your weapon. Your weapon's moveset can actually get caught in the environment here, so it's very important that you actually know the moveset of the weapon that you're using. So you can be certain in a desperate situation that you may get in where your attack is going to go, especially if you're running around, rolling, jumping about, and just generally getting into a confused state in the level. I know that's more than a few times I've thought that I could hit an enemy with the attack, but realized my range was just a little bit off, or I attacked right to left, and if I attacked left to right, I would have hit him, but it just wasn't in the cards. If you press yellow or triangle, you will two-hand your weapon, which gives you a different moveset. So make sure to examine what the moveset of your weapon is to get to know it. And you'll notice that if you hit red, you will do a back step. This is not terribly useful, don't worry about it. However, you do know if you point in a direction with the stick and hit red, you will roll. Unlike in other games, say like Mass Effect 3 or I'm trying to think of other games, like Gears of War actually had a roll. I know the second one did anyway. The roll is not sort of a casual thing that you can do occasionally to barely avoid an enemy attack that wouldn't really have damaged you that much anyway. The roll is essential, and you need to learn how to roll. And just by watching me and listening to what I say, you're going to figure out how to do it. You need to be able to time your rolls exactly. The attacks in this game, unlike, say, in a Dragon Age game, are far slower, and you can actually watch them and watch where an enemy is going and what he is doing with his attacks, in most cases. So you just have to be aware of that, and especially during boss fights, it is almost always better to simply avoid being hit with a roll than it is to take damage. And that's another thing we have to learn about this game. Let's take a look. Yeah, you saw my health go down there. This game, even if you wear big, heavy armor, is not designed to be played by being attacked and taking damage. Even through your shield, you'll say, you're still going to take some endurance damage and maybe a bit of physical damage. And it's just better to avoid being hit rather than to take the damage. Think of it like in boxing. You want to try not to be hit, not be so tough that you can take a full-on hit. And even with large amounts of health and good armor, you're still not going to be able to take a significant amount of damage from most enemies, even fairly weak enemies like this. It's not like, say, in Dragon's Dogma, where you can just get hacked away at by an enemy for a while when nothing's really the problem. I'm going to finish off this wretch. This is kind of dark, actually, at the very beginning of the game. We're actually killing people that were essentially us, that were, our character, where he was wearing the hollow clothes that we wore. I don't know what these guys could be doing here in terms of lore, if anything. Probably nothing. But maybe they were just people that didn't make it, they tried really hard, and they still failed pretty badly. Now you'll notice there's a number in the lower right-hand screen that says 60. That is my soul number, and souls in this game are rewarded by killing enemies, and they are a combination of experience points and money. They've been lumped into one category. And not only that, they are not something that you retain upon death. You actually lose that 60 souls if I were to die now and go back to the checkpoint. And I would have to come back here to the point where I lost them if I died, and I would have one chance to get it back. But if I died along the way, you do not get those souls back. They're gone. So the game generously gives you one attempt to get them back, and that is it. Now, I really like this system because it adds a certain amount of how should I put it? Not desperation, that's not what I was going to say. It adds a certain amount of risk and complexity and serious decision making that you have to make during this game. In all of the Souls games, about how you are going to handle having your souls, how you are going to worry about it if you die, if you're going to try to retrieve them, if you're not going to bother with it, if you don't care about it. And it just adds a layer of difficulty that I really like. And you see this enemy here is facing the other way. Another key aspect of the game that we're going to continue talking about for a while is the backstab. Those of you who played pen and paper RPGs, especially D&D or Pathfinder, will know that a rogue gets a special 1d6 and an extra attack damage if he hits an enemy that directly from behind, and maybe from the flanks too, I don't remember. Or maybe that's reduced, I don't know. But this has done that in this game by creating the backstab ability, where you actually, if you do that, you go up to an enemy from directly from behind and they're facing the other way, and you hit the R1 button, then you will go into this little animation and score an extra attack on them. I think the original game did this animation a lot better because it was nastier, meaner, and bloodier, and it looked less like he was doing a cool martial arts sword move, and more like he was just a nasty bugger who was doing really, really mean things to a guy, like shanking him from behind with a dagger or something like that. Let's move on. Now, when you are backstabbing someone, you cannot have your shield up. So that's sort of the risk-reward you have to play. You have to keep your shield down and go up to him. And if you have the shield up, it's going to result in a failed backstab. You have to keep the shield down, go up to them, R1, and you can backstab them. And we're going to get a better weapon for myself, because this little broken straight sword is kind of crap. A dagger. That's not much better, but it's a little bit better. Okie doke. Now that we have this dagger, let's take a look at some of the things that we have here. You see in the lower right-hand corner here, left-hand corner here, where it says total attack. That's just a quick way to know the attack value. Now the broken straight sword says it's higher, but the dagger is actually better because it's faster. Now let's move on here. Something you're always going to want to be aware of when you're rolling is that a lot of the attacks that you do in Dark Souls, in the Souls games in general, you'll have to roll towards an enemy. It's sort of like the closer you are to danger, the farther you are from harm. You have to roll into an enemy in order to avoid being hit. And it's kind of confusing and difficult at first because your first instinct is to roll away from it, but you can figure it out pretty quickly. There's so much more to talk about with the damage, but with the combat, but we'll get to that eventually. This is something you're also going to have to worry about constantly. This happens all the time in all the Souls games. An enemy is going to be behind the one you're engaging, and he is going to have a bow and is going to be trying to nail you with that bow from behind. So you always have to be aware of your environment. They teach you this really well in Dark Souls 1, a bit less so. Maybe it's just a bit more ham-fisted in Dark Souls 2, is that in many ways you have to fight against the environment as well. Unlike in other games where it seems that you're kind of on a flat plane, fighting enemies also on a flat plane, you have to be aware if an enemy is on an elevation, if an enemy, has a ranged supporter behind them. You just have to always be aware of your environment. Let's go through here. Just another thing about being visually aware. There's another item there. You have to look around in order to find all the stuff. Let's kick down this ladder. We can now get up here whenever we want. Oh god, these guys. And this is the reason we came up here in the first place. These people. Now this is a bird's nest, obviously, and it is invisible. There are apparently birds, or invisible birds, or something. This has been in all of the Souls games, and what this thing is you can leave certain items that they want on the ground here, and they will trade you better items for them, items that you might have a use for, typically upgrade material that you need to strengthen your weapons or armor. The voices are always annoying. This might be the most annoying of all three games, though. And what you want to do here is go into your inventory and find one of two items, the smooth and silky stone or the petrified something. An unidentified petrified object, pleasant to the touch despite its looks. A rare and peculiar thing to be certain, but one without a known purpose. Yeah, here's the purpose right here. Leave it right here. Oh, wow. Oh, God. Ah! I can't stand that. And let's pick it up. Oh, and we got a useless ring. Wonderful. Okay. Kind of don't want to talk about that ring now, but I will, I guess. Let's also leave this. This we might get shafted on. I don't know if we're going to get anything good here. A divine blessing. We've also been shafted. Perfect. Perfect. We got nothing good there. Thanks for nothing. You cannot climb anything in this game, and when you drop down, you have to sort of, even if it's just like a waist-high wall, that's an insurmountable obstacle to this guy. Just keep that in mind. Oh boy. Let's just take a look at some of these items in here. The Divine Blessing fully restores your HP and cures all status effects. Great. However, this is totally useless because you have many other items that do those things as well, and do it much more swiftly than this. This takes quite a while, and can really kind of take too much time, especially during a boss fight, to do. So that's not terribly useful. Let's go over here. I mentioned before about the souls. You can collect what are known as hard souls. And hard souls will allow you to stock up. I believe this is 200 and that is 400 souls added to your counter. You should hang on to these until you actually need them in order to level up or make a purchase that you want. Now let's talk about the human effigy. Reverses hollowing. Now remember, we were a zombie at the beginning and our health was at half of its maximum. Every time you die in this game, your health is reduced. Your maximum health is reduced by a sliver, down all the way to 50% where it caps out. And this is obviously going to make the game very difficult, especially early on, because if you're dying constantly, the game actually gets harder, not easier. Which, admittedly, is true to life. You know, if you do badly, things get worse. They don't get better. So, I mean, that does kind of make sense, although it is a bit cruel in the game to punish you, especially early on, for playing badly. Especially in a game where it's expected that you have to die a lot. I don't typically come in here, but I'm going to go in here just to talk about a thing or two. Let's see here. Oh, Lord. Now, you notice there, I did something weird. I think I did this before also with another enemy. If you have a shield equipped, and you press the L2 button, instead of blocking, you will do something called a parry. And parries are a little bit different in this game than they are in the real-world swordsmanship. In this game, when you parry an enemy, you are knocking the blade away out of you and leaving them stunned for a moment. And as they're left stunned, you can do a riposte. And this riposte is, well, it's a critical damage that does extra hits, does extra damage to an enemy. I noticed there I completely failed in that second one. I'm not going to lie there. That was pretty embarrassing. Parrying was done horribly in Dark Souls 2. It was great in Dark Souls 1 and pretty darn good in Demon Souls. However, in this game, they completely screwed it up and made it too hard. You know, I've heard some talk about maybe it's the frame rate doing it, and the PC version makes it easier or something like that, but I don't know anything about that at all. And because I'm not playing this on PC. So it really, and I was playing this on the console for Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, so why is it any different at all for Dark Souls 2? Why should it be different? They changed it so much. It's really, really annoying. Parrying is something in all the games that is challenging. However, it was challenging but fair. Unfortunately, in this game, it is far too challenging. Enemies almost always are designed to do a pretty strong attack right away, without giving you much of a chance to block them. Now I'm going to attack this guy down here, and I'm going to try to do a leaping attack. If you press forward and R2 at the same time, you will do this. And we can do this down there onto him. Let's see if we can do this. Yes, we can. Tragically, we did not do very much damage. I'm going to keep this guy alive for a little bit because I want to show you something with him. The leaping attack in this game is terrible. Demon's Souls doesn't have one, and it sucks because there are a lot of moments in that game when I'm playing it where I feel like I really want to use it, but I can't because it doesn't exist. But in Dark Souls 2, the leaping attack is so difficult. Why did they make it so hard? They made it so you have to be so damn precise that it really feels like, I mean, I can barely do it. I'm not confident in it at all. And that's with a fair amount of practice. It's still hard. And it should be one of your fairly basic attacks, that you could do fairly effortlessly. And which brings me to another attack they screwed up in this game, forward and R1, which I'm going to attempt to do. That's it right there. If you press forward and R1 at the exact same time, you will do a kind of a knockback attack. In Demon's Souls, it was a shove. In Dark Souls, it was a kick. And this attack was just part of your standard repertoire of playing. It was, it was a normal part of what you could do. And in Demon's Souls, honestly, it was so easy to do it, I thought it might have been a little bit too easy. Because, I would do it almost accidentally, press forward and R1. But in this game, it has to be so damn precise that I can't get it most of the time, and it should be another basic part of your attack. I don't know what the heck they did. I do know that they screwed it up. What this attack is supposed to do, the kick or the shove, depending on the game you're playing, is supposed to knock your enemy aside for a bit, maybe knock his shield out of the way so you can get to attack him. And, just sort of stop him from doing whatever he's doing so you can prepare for your attack. But in this game, they made it way too difficult. And especially, also, they changed something. And in this game, when you do that, I'm trying to do it here. Damn it. There it is. When you do that, you will connect with an enemy's, and if you connect with an enemy, you will put him in a repostable state, sort of like I did with that parry, and you can get critical damage off on him. And, however, it's so difficult to do that, and it really takes away something that was so necessary, this sort of kick when knocking away at the enemy's shield. It's just crazy, and it's just wrong. Also keep in mind that if you're coming to this game from Demon's Souls or Dark Souls 1, they changed shields significantly in a way that I do not like. Now on, there's kind of a little animation between when you press L1 and when the shield comes up. In Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, it was instantaneous. The shield, as soon as you tapped that, the shield was up. Now, there's a split second there, I don't know if you can really see it exactly, where the shield is not officially up. And you can get hit in that way, and I really do not like that, because it kind of ruined some of the spontaneity of the game, and it kind of made the game a little bit too slow. It tried to slow down your combat abilities there, and I really disliked that. Cracked Red Eye Orb, that is a PvP item, and we're going to talk about multiplayer another time. I don't think there's anything at the other end of this, which is kind of disappointing, but there you go. Yeah, nothing here. Although maybe you can see those guys, I guess you can. Alright, well anyway. Let's talk about jumping. It sucks. The end. Alright, maybe we can talk about it a little more. Now, some people, when they criticize the Souls games, will talk about something they like to call artificial difficulty. And what that means, essentially, is something that doesn't really challenge the player, but is more designed for them to fail at in some way before they learn how to do it. And the Souls games do have something of that in them. However, it is only relating to one issue only, and that is jumping. And the way that you can tell something is artificially difficult is if it is more difficult for your character to do than it is for you to do in your average everyday life. And the jumping in this game is so complicated and annoying that it will drive you to despair. And I guarantee that the majority of deaths in this game will be due to jumping, because it is so freaking broken. Why couldn't it just be like in Dragon's Dogma? You know, where you can just jump with a button. There's even a free effing button, and I'm tapping it furiously right now, the green button, that you only use occasionally when you talk to characters. You don't use it during combat, 98% of the game. So why the heck would you even bother putting that there? This might be our very first death of the game because of jumping, and I kind of do want to show this to you, just in case you wanted to see what it was like when you went hollow. I'm going to make an attempt. I don't know if I'm going to live. Oh no, I made it! Oh my god, I can't believe that. This is an amber herb, I think. Yeah. The amber herbs are kind of an interesting item in this game. I'm going to take this time now to talk about stats in the game. This is going to take a little while. This is your overall level. Dark Souls 2 went a little bit overboard with the levels, and you can actually get, I think, too many levels in this game compared to other ones. You can get something, around the time of, just after the midpoint of the game, you'll usually be around level 100. They're giving experience points away like candy in this game, and they should not. It's a little crazy. Vigor here is just determining your HP. This is how many hit points you have. Nothing special about that. Most characters are going to need a decent amount of this. Endurance is maybe the most important stat in the game. Every single character, no matter what your build, whether it's strength or dexterity, whether you're a knight or a thief or a wizard or anything, or a cleric, everyone needs endurance. And if you don't know what to put something into, trust me, put it in endurance, and that is really going to help you out. Vitality. Oh dear Lord. Vitality is a huge mistake that they should never have done in this game. And there are a couple of other mistakes just in the attribute screen that we're going to talk about. Vitality determines your equipment load. Equipment load here determines how quickly, how fast you can roll. Now you saw the roll I was doing out there was the normal roll, and this game you can do two kinds, the normal roll and the heavy, or as it's usually known as, the fat roll, which is a huge, heavy clanking down on the ground, sort of, if you're wearing heavy armor or wielding a heavy weapon, and it is a death trap. Unless you're really familiar with the game, you really do not want to be fat rolling for any reason, especially early on. It is very dangerous to do that, because you will lose invincibility frames as you roll, and be able to be hit more, simple as that. This is a terrible decision because they did this right in, again, Dark Souls 1 is the middle porridge. It is the correct way to do it. They did it perfectly with that one, because in Demon's Souls you had, again, the fast roll and the fat roll. However, it took so much to get to that fast roll that you had to take off huge amounts of your armor, and you essentially had to walk through the game either wearing basic clothing or stripped in some way. I remember it took forever to put on the chest piece of the fluted armor set, the beginning plate mail type armor set that you got with the knight character. It was absurd. You really needed to have a standard roll as your beginning roll. And in Dark Souls 1, they did everything perfectly. Excuse me, let me talk about Dark Souls 2 first. In Dark Souls 2, they kind of changed that to the opposite. You see, your equip load, mine is at 47.5 right now. Anything under 70 equip burden is going to give you that normal roll rather than the fat roll. So rather than having most of your time being the fat roll and some of it being less, being the quick roll like in Demon's Souls, you can now fast roll most of the time with most of your weapons with minimal stat investment, which was a bit of a mistake, I think, because it makes it a little too cheap and easy to wear big, heavy armor, especially because they're giving souls away like candy and you can gain so many levels. Dark Souls 1, again, the middle porridge, they did it perfectly right. you had, I believe it was either 3 or 4 different tiers of rolling. If you were nude, or if you were below 25% equip burden, you did a sort of somersaulting ninja fast roll, which was really, really useful and had a lot of iframes. Most characters did a normal roll, which was between that and the next one, which is the fat roll. There might have been a 4th one in there that's kind of between the regular and the fat, but I'm not sure. And it was visually, obvious. You knew when you were doing your quick roll, your somersault, and when you were doing a normal roll and your fat roll, and everything was done straight away, and they didn't need to change it. And there are things in this game that reflect that. It's one thing to have a really crummy design in your game, and another thing to have a really crummy design in your game that you don't fix in the sequel, and another thing altogether to have a really crummy design thing in your game, fix it in the second one, and then fail miserably by changing it back to another crappy version in the third one. They didn't just not fix something, they re-broke it, which is ridiculous, and it's totally absurd that they did that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now let's move on a little bit from vitality to attunement. Now, spells work are much more similar in this game, in Dark Souls 1, to the Dungeons & Dragons, the pen and paper RPG version of spells, where at the checkpoints you attune, or in D&D sort of study, your spells as you rest, before you actually go out and fight. However, in this game, unlike D&D, you have multiple casts of each spell. Usually multiple casts of each spell. I don't have any spells on me right now. We'll talk about that later. But the more attunement you have, the more spells you can use, more spell slots you can use. So right now I have 0 because I'm a warrior. I'm not really going to be using spells for quite a while. But once you get up to 10 attunement, you will get 1 slot for 1 spell, and then so on and so forth. You will get more slots all the way up to, I think 6 is usually the maximum at 30 attunement, which is usually where I cap out, but you can get higher than that. Your attunement also determines your cast speed, which was a really good decision that they made in this game, because it can determine how quickly a basic spell can be shot off. So low-level early spells that usually in Dark Souls 1 would have absolutely no purpose once you've gotten a more advanced version of it, could be very powerful later on in this game because of how quickly you can cast them. In Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls, you were really at the mercy of the enemies around you when you cast a spell, because they were mostly painfully slow, and it was very, very difficult to engage swiftly running around and rolling and moving. But in this game, you're kind of like the kids in Harry Potter that are just spamming spells and sort of rolling and jumping around like they were in the 7th movie. And I just think that was sort of a good idea. I like that a lot. It's better than the mana system that was in Demon Souls, which is the more traditional one. These 4 stats I don't really need to talk about. Strength, Dex, Int, and Faith. They are, if you've played any RPG before, you'll know what they mean. Strength for big heavy weapons, Dex for light, rapiers, daggers, scimitars, katanas, and so forth. Intelligence is for sorcery characters. You boost this, you'll get more damage out of your sorcery spells. Faith is for divine magic characters. This we have to talk about, adaptability. Adaptability is another stupid mistake that they made, along with the vitality, because they changed the rolling once again. As I said before, you had a clear view of what your iframes were when you were rolling. At 25% or other, you had the swift somersault, and then you had the normal one, and then the fat one, where you had the least amount of invincibility frames. But in this game, they made the invincibility frames that you get into a stat, which doesn't make any sense and is unnecessary. And like I said, they'd already freaking fixed it. Why in God's name would you fix something that wasn't broken? I mean, no one was asking for this. This is ridiculous and unnecessary. And not only that, but they needlessly complicated it by not just making it about adaptability, but making it about agility. You see, your adaptability affects your agility. And I know if this is sounding ridiculously complicated, it's because it is. And your agility is what you need to raise eventually. And your adaptability, why isn't it just adaptability? Why agility at all? I think your agility is partially affected by adaptability and maybe vitality or endurance, like they come together to form the same thing. But it's far too complicated. It's ridiculous. All you need to know is that you will have to put points into adaptability in order to up your iframe counter. However, it's difficult to get a real physical sense that you're doing something. You can't see it, unlike in the other game, in Dark Souls 1, where you saw clearly the difference between a swift ninja-like somersault and a big old heavy hunk of fat roll. That was a terrible decision on the developer's part. Now, there is another tree here, but we're not going to go in it. You don't need to go in it. There's nothing of particular value in it. Don't worry about it. It's just going to lead you into being attacked more and more often. Yeah, I see him down there, but we don't want to go down there yet, and neither do you. What that guy down there is guarding is a coffin that if you enter in it, your character will be gender swapped to a woman, which is very handy and very useful, and I like that. But I'm perplexed at why you can't do everything. For instance, why can't I go and change the facial appearance of my character? What if I get tired of him being blonde and want him to be a redhead? You know, what if I want him to have black hair? I mean, why do I have to get stuck? Maybe I want to have a beard instead of a mustache later, but you can't change that. You can just change the gender. So that's kind of annoying. And you could change your facial hair in Dragon's Dogma, I believe. Now, we're going to go back to those footprints at the very beginning. And that's probably where I'm going to call it an end to this episode. I know this was a lot of talking, and I did a lot of stuff here, and talked about a whole bunch of things, but more will become clear later on. And there's still so many things I haven't talked about. And I'll just quickly talk about this, the Amber Herb. This will restore your spell uses. So say you had 8 casts of a spell, and you use up all of them. You have 0 spell casts left. If you use the Amber Herb, you'll get a percentage of those restored. I think you'll maybe get, if it's 8, you'll get 2 or 3 casts restored. So, wizard characters, this is vitally important to carry some of these around to restore your spell uses, in case you get in trouble. And now all of those enemies over there have had their, have been restored to where they were, even though they had died. Just pop in here. This woman. They annoy the heck out of me, these guys. Still want the armor, though. Anyway. I will probably die to this guy, but I think that's a fitting way to end. I mean, dying in a Souls game, and this is the way you want to end, right? This guy, I think, is called in the guide an ogre, but he's more commonly known on the interwebs as a hippoclops, or some sort of cyclops. He is a gigantic enemy. And I love that they put this early on in the game to know that you're not supposed to come up here and fight this guy. He is too hard. However, they did this better in Dark Souls 1, because before you'd even gotten your base weapon, you were whacked at by a gigantic fat demon, just kind of like this thing. However, you were required to defeat it in order to move on with the game. So let's just quietly sneak up to him and I really hate these enemies. Not because they're sort of big and strong. I mean, that's a part of it, of course, but really the problem is that they have a grab attack. And this any enemy in any Souls game that has a grab attack, I hate. I hated the Illithids in Demon Souls. I hated the... what enemies in Dark Souls 1 had a grab attack? I know there was at least one. And if you are grabbed by this enemy, you're dead. You're gone. There's nothing... You can't do anything about it. He will munch down on you with those big molars of his, and that's the end of it. That's all she wrote. This is another criticism of the game that has been leveled about it. You will see this throughout the entire game. In almost every level, there will be a moment where an enemy is smacking up against a door that they cannot fit through because they're of too great a girth. It's kind of absurd and kind of ridiculous and kind of lazy level design. But, well, that's a lot of Dark Souls 2, I guess. you're going to find that. You better be at peace with that if you're going to be playing Dark Souls 2. This is obviously a very cheesy way to kill him. This is probably a good point to mention that in Dark Souls 2, in all the Souls games, you have to fight tactically. If you don't fight tactically, you're gonna die. And I've seen some people online criticize this as being a cheap tactic to constantly target an enemy if you hold on R1. You see the little target comes around him, and sort of strafe left and right, or always try to get to the side or the back of an enemy. That's just a good policy for any enemy in any of the Souls games, is to get around to their back or side, because that will make things so much easier in fighting them. And some people think this is kind of cowardly or something like that, but and it is very untraditional for role-playing games. Usually, if they're used to just Dragon Age, you'll just charge up to an enemy and start fighting. But in this game, I like that you have to think about things a little bit more. Oh. See him sit on me? That's the point of having tactics in your combat. You don't want to be like charging like a wave of Russian infantry into a hail of machine gun fire. You want to actually think about the way that you attack and hope that it will, fight smart, not hard. There's a great YouTuber who does Souls videos called A German Spy, and you can tell that he really enjoys fighting smart, not just fighting hard, I suppose. Although, in this game it's a little bit harder to do that than it was, say, in Demon's Souls or Dark Souls 1. They really are about hacking away, bashing away at enemies without that tactical, intelligent element to it. Now, does anyone think that this guy looks like those goblin guys in the Teddy Ruxpin cartoon? I mean, honestly, look at this guy's face. Is this a reference to that? It looks like that. This guy's from Teddy Ruxpin, isn't he? He is. Those little monsters that the wizard guy controlled. No? Nobody else sees that? Well, you're wrong. You're ridiculous. He looks goofy, but he is serious. That one hit of those is going to take away a big chunk of my health. But it's really that it would be so much more fun if he didn't have that grab attack, because I didn't have to worry about it. I wouldn't have to be cheesing him like this. Usually I just deal with these characters at range. I don't even bother getting up close. You don't really need to do this, by the way. This isn't a necessary part of the game. Just a little something extra I wanted to end the episode with, kind of with a bang, because I didn't do a whole lot of stuff. Now I can see the idea of baiting him into doing this fall attack, but he doesn't stay down long enough. I would think in another one of the Souls games he would do that fall, and he would be down there long enough for you to hack away at him a couple of times. These items I forgot to mention, and they're very important, it's dumb of me not to mention them, are called life gems, and as you can see they slightly restore HP. This was another very controversial decision in the Souls games, one that I'm not really happy with. Again, I love this game, and I actually like it better than Demon's Souls, but I'm not going to just not criticize it or something. Yay! In the original game, Demon's Souls, the way that your character healed was from healing grass, which was items that were dropped from enemies in the first world, Boletarian Palace. And these items could pretty easily be farmed to the point where you can get enormous amounts of them eventually, especially by the end of the game. If you're in the third part of Boletarian Palace, you're going to get tons of that healing grass. And some people argue that this made the game a little broken because it was kind of too easy to get tons and tons of healing items. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's a criticism that's been leveled. Are these dog bones? What is this? What is here? Are they bones? Anyway. But in Dark Souls 1, this was changed significantly So you would have your health item would be something called an Estus flask, which essentially is a fancy way of saying healing potion, and you would get them restored every time you rested at a checkpoint. So if you would start out with 5, and if you used all 5 of them, you'd go back to one of these bonfires, and all 5 of them would be filled up again. I think in the lore it was that they were being filled up with the light or the heat of the something going on with the bonfire. I don't remember. But it was a way to curb healing abuse in a way. However, in Dark Souls 2, they not only allow you to have these life gem things, which are essentially like the healing grass, but you have Estus Flask too. We're going to get that in the next section of this series, in the hub area. And the Estus Flasks, even though you start out with a smaller amount, very quickly get a fair amount of them, to the point where it's ridiculous, and you can even buy life gems from a merchant, essentially an infinite number of it, eventually, from her, almost at the beginning of the game. So you never are in doubt about what you need for your for your health. You always seem to have something to top yourself off between fights. In Dark Souls 1, it was very different. You felt like you were exploring and had limited supplies of those flasks. And if you didn't know where to go, then, you had to wander around, you had to fight enemies, you had to use up your Estus Flask because you're going to get hit during that fighting. And it felt much more like you were exploring in a distant land with limited supplies. But this game is the worst of both of those worlds. It has both the Estus Flask and the Life Gem. Oh well. I'm going to end the episode here. I will see you all in the next one. This is the hub area that we're going to be exploring in the next episode, Majula. Bye-bye, everybody.